Welcome to the World Chess Championship 2014. Magnus Carlsen, defending world champion from Norway, rated 2863. Highest rating ever in the history of chess. Looking to defend his title. Magnus won it last year from former world champion Vishy Anand, seen here, ex-world champion from India. Vishy's looking for revenge. It's going to be a great match. Stay tuned for the games. Alright folks, John Cordisco back again. Game 5 of the World Chess Championship 2014 being played in Sochi, Russia. White, former world champion Vishy Anand from India in black. Magnus Carlsen, current world champion. We all know that Magnus beat Vishy last year for the World Championship, and Vishy made it through the candidates. And he was a big surprise to everybody. He won. So it's a rematch, which doesn't happen that often, but hats off to Vishy for getting through that. I want to mention at the end is a short press conference with the two players after the game. You can see it there after I go through the game here. Anyway, let's go through it. Interesting game. It's Queen's Indian. Go through the first few moves, pretty much standard stuff. Bishop goes back to e7. Knight c3. Bishop comes out. Bishop g2. Now, two bishops like this facing off on each other can be very tricky depending on how the game goes. c6. Now that seems counterintuitive that you're blocking off your bishop, but it controls a d5 and b5 square. And right now it's important. You can always release that bishop at a later time. e4. Get your center pawns right out for Vishy. And Magnus goes d5, which was in part point of going to c6. E takes, c takes, knight e5, and black simply castles. I don't know, this knight's in a good spot, but it's hitting some key squares, but we'll have to see how it goes. Castles, get your king in safety. Standard stuff. Knight c6, threatening a knight. Pawn takes. And that was a computer move. Queen to a4 was the other computer choice. C takes. Knight takes. The e pawn. d6. Interesting. Now that was totally unexpected. Totally unexpected. I give hats off to Vishy. I think that was a hell of a move. It's the computer move, but close second is d takes e5. I like d6. Makes you think a little bit more, and I'm sure these guys have seen this position on the board before. And that's part of the problem, especially when you get a little bit older. I'm going to be 58 this week. Once you hit the mid-late 30 mark, your recollection and your memory fades a little. I mean, not a ton, but it starts to slowly fade. You don't notice it, but slowly over time. And to recall positions, and sometimes you've analyzed things from 2 or 3 years ago in a match or a tournament you were in, and then trying to recall that. Now, obviously, the first thing is, though, this bishop is up for grabs. So Magnus, of course, did the right thing. Move the knight back. Pawn takes, queen takes. Now, the rooks are connected, and the queen is guarding the bishops. Everybody's happy. Bishop g5, pinning that knight. Good idea. Because now if you move the queen, he'll take in black's kingside pawns around his king will be fractured. h6 to chase him off. I think most of us would probably move back to bishop 4. And believe it or not, according to the computer, that's the least good move. Bishop takes f6 and d5. And Vishy went d5. Now this is a little tricky here. I mean, what do you do here? I mean, that d-pawn could be a real pain depending on how you do things. Magnus solved it with knight a5. Now the computer likes rook a and then queen a4. But after knight a5, bishop takes, Queen takes, pawn takes, queen takes. Rook e1 to hit the queen. Rook goes to f6. Very interesting here. Very interesting position. Computer gives white about a half a pawn advantage. Nothing really spectacular. Computer likes bishop take, b7, then knight takes. But what Vishy decided to do is go knight to d5, which is interesting. The computer didn't hate it, but didn't like that move either. I happen to like it. It certainly complicates things. Now, after queen f6, the computer liked queen a4, queen e2, bishop takes b7. I think Anand wanted to mix it up a little bit. I think he felt safe enough where he can take a couple of chances, and it's not the end of the world. And here, Magnus had to give up the bishop for the knight. Bishop takes. Now, believe it or not, even though it's on the same file with the queen, that bishop on d5 is incredibly freaking annoying. It certainly dominates this knight. Now look at all the squares that this knight can go to, and every single one of them is covered by the bishop. It's one of those deals where the bishop just dominates the knight. And on top of that, you have this really annoying right here. That could come in handy later. Rook d to d8 just to pin the bishop. Doesn't force queen to f3, but that is a correct move. And now from what I understand, I remember watching this. If you go on livestream.com or chess24.com, they'll have the replays for the game here. But go on livestream.com, punch in FIDE, and it will give you the list of the videos. Magnus spent a long time on this move. And we're on move 23. Queen takes f3 is the computer suggestion. And in second place, just a quarter of a pawn behind in score, is queen takes b2, which Magnus did. Now, believe it or not, rook a to d1 is the correct move. Now, I forget the sequence, and I saw it on I think it was Daniel King was going over this game for Power Play Chess, I believe it's called, on YouTube. Or you can go to chessbase.com and see the video. Just put it on round 5, and you'll see it listed there. There's a long scenario where the queen gets trapped if certain things aren't done. Queen f6, and Magnus just brought it back. He says, you know, I'm not going to fool around with this and get in a jam. So he just brought his queen back. I think that was a little bit saying, you know what, I'm not going to chance it. Maybe psychologically, that loss in round 3 is affecting him more than we thought. I don't have a favorite either way, Magnus or Vishy. I want to see it go down to the very end. As a chess fan, I want to see it go down to the end. I think Vishy was just remarkable that he got back in a rematch through the candidates tournament cycle and just outplayed the best players in the world. Now they say, well, they were not playing that well. Well, no, too bad. I mean, you know, those of you in the United States that watch baseball, you know, you hit a home run. The pitcher made a mistake when he threw the pitch. That's what sport is all about. And I think Vishy deserves to be here. And if he can get close in this match to the very end, I think he has a good chance of pulling this off. But we'll have to see. Enough of my ramblings. Queen takes. Now pawn takes. Now that's a little bit of a problem for Magnus, because moving that queen back to f6 caused that queen trade. And now the pawns here are all isolated, and one is double. He could be targets later. Granted, there's a lot less pieces on the board. But I would certainly take white anytime over black right now. And that knight is still dominating. Rook to e7. Now we're getting a rook on the 7th rank. And it's always, you can always get in a jam. You can always bring your bishop back here and protect your rook if you have to. King to g7. And there was a little trick there. Let's go back one move. There's a little trick there. The problem was, bishop takes check. King can't take. And if rook takes, rook takes. So he had to move the king. Rook takes. Knight c6. He finally got to move the knight. Now we all see why, of course, why a bishop can't take, because he loses the rook check. So that was Magnus's way of getting that knight out. Now this is a move that Grandmaster Daniel King from England kind of criticized. And the computer agrees. Rook to a4. Now very close second is rook to b7, what Vichy did. But he thought that Vichy go rook to a4 and play on a little bit. I don't think Danny King was criticizing Vichy for going rook b7. I just thought he might go for rook a4, which is the computer's first choice, rook b7 second. And rook a3, rook c7, they're all close in score. And it's not so much the score, it's the fact that Vichy to play on. And I think there's only one or two alternatives in this game. Either white wins or white draws. I don't think there's any chance at all for white to lose this game. So, I won't call it a criticism, but he was a little surprised that Vichy didn't push the envelope. Rook b7. Knight b4. Get that knight out. He's hitting the bishop. b3 or f3 comes out the same. He went b3. Rook takes. Bishop takes. Knight takes. Rook takes. Now the pawns are liquidated on the queen side. We have bishop against knight. Almost a half pawn advantage for white, but it's the computer shows an advantage, but is it a big enough advantage to win? No. Knight c3, bishop, f5. Let's go through a few more moves here. King, rook d8, get the rook out in the open. Rook c6, hitting the knight. Knight has to move. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Rook c4, this is dead drawn. f5. Hits the pawn. Rook d2. Pawn takes. a3. Rook. Rook takes check. King g3. Rook takes. And then next is rook takes. It's dead drawn. So the draw was agreed to. I think it was a pretty interesting game. It's just one of those things where you know you have the advantage and you get comfortable. And I don't mean comfortable as in you get lackadaisical or lazy. I mean comfortable as in the pressure is off of you now that you're not going to lose. And that's always important when you're playing. But sometimes what happens is when that pressure comes off that you know you're not going to lose, that little bit of edge that you need to push the envelope even harder. Now, a couple of commentators had said, Danny King too, that if the roles were reversed, and that was Magnus, he would have played on. Because that's what Magnus does. He has a tiny advantage and he just grinds you down. And a lot of the times he ends up winning. And I think during the press conference somebody had mentioned that fact, that somebody said that Magnus was playing against himself, because that's what Magnus does. And he was on the receiving end this time. Anyway, folks, that's Game 5 in the World Chess Championship 2014. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank all my new subscribers. Thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And as always, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Excuse me? Sir? Okay. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start our press conference. The 5th game of the World Championship match is finished in a draw. So, maybe Vishantan, you can start, please.
Well, we got to this position, d6, knight c6. I'd looked at this line long back and I thought this should be better for white. He went queen f6, knight d5. I mean, we were both analyzing queen b2, something like this. And perhaps white can play this position. And then he took rook d8, so I think I have to do this. Queen b2, rook a d1. And it took me a while as well to work this one out. Bishop f7, rook f7. And it just resigns. The problem for black is that this move, this check, and we both made the same mistake of thinking queen c1 check g5 was possible for about a second, and then realized that's not the case. So he went here. Rook e7 is nice because I'm always threatening to play bishop f7 and liberate it. King g7. And I saw rook c7, I saw king g2, both of which are quite interesting tries. King g2, I thought he plays f5. And I can no longer take on f7. And what did we decide? Maybe I can play rook c7.
But I thought maybe knight c6 is better than...
Knight c6, rook here, knight e5, which incidentally he can do as well instead of... for king g2, king g2 he does this. Instead of king g7 he can do this as well. But then you get this more or less the same thing. And well, we can get some position like this.
Maybe I can go rook d6.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm just giving you the idea rather than the variation.
Yeah, but this is much worse.
Yeah, but now you get bishop h5
Yeah,
maybe. But even there you get knight g6 and f5.
Okay.
But okay, it's unpleasant. And for this, something like this with just about enough counterplay. But actually, I think rook c7 would have been a good try. It's not completely clear, but after a6, I can go rook d3 now. And now if rook d6, I get this trick again. And check and takes. So...
yeah, probably king h8 is forced. Or maybe rook c8.
Rook c8 is
but
possible.
Then rook
this one to
rook
c3.
c3 and rook back.
No, and then back.
Yeah.
So it was close, but then I thought I'll just take the pawn, and I thought I'll keep the rook like this and get a better bishop versus knight thing. But then it hit me that it would be very hard to do anything with the knight on d4. And so, well, after rook b7, it's basically just a draw.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe this game in general? Let's say, were you happy with the outcome of the opening, and how did you estimate the position during the game when you came to this end game?
Well, I mean, the ending looked pleasant to me, but maybe black just has enough resources.
Mm-hmm. Magnus, would you like to add something about this game, about the opening?
Yeah, I think in general white is a little bit better, but it should be holdable. It turned out to be actually pretty complicated, but at least none of us could find anything real after the queen swap. So maybe black is holding.
When you played queen b2, did you also consider to change the queens immediately, or this endgame is really worse for black?
Yes, I could do that, but we get to swap a pair of rooks. I guess I can put the rook on d7, put the knight on b7, but it's always going to be a torture. I mean, with rooks, or sometimes even without rooks, it's not easy to defend, since the bishop is much stronger than the knight, and the light squares on the queen side are potentially weak.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you keep on switching the openings. So does it show that you are kind of trying still to find something against d4?
Maybe.
Can you say that it's part of your strategy, or not really?
Well, I mean, at least it was better today than it was the last black game. But now I have a couple of white games and looking forward to that.
Question to Vish also that you played quite fast at the opening. Does it show that you were expecting this?
I mean, you have to expect everything. So.
Do we have questions? Yes.
Magnus, you have said that when you lose a game, you're in a state of emergency. Do you feel it like that now?
No, I think in the match it's a little bit different. Since well, I'm on 50% now, and in a tournament that will be pretty bad. But in a match, it's okay. I'm only competing against one player, so I'm.
Magnus, how well prepared were you for the opening today?
Okay, I guess. But I mean, he was also well prepared. He knew the most critical way. And maybe I could have played more accurately. I don't know.
Anand, do you think the less attention you get from the Indian media affects your play in a positive way?
No, I'm not thinking of that.
Actually, today there was an interesting tweet from Timur Rajabov after Queen F3 move of white. He wrote that now Magnus Carlsen has to play against Carlsen. Okay, probably he meant that this position, this is type of position which normally you prefer to have. So, what can you say about it? Was it unpleasant for you, this position?
Okay, it goes without saying that it's more pleasant to play with white there, regardless of who is playing white and black.
But about this Queen F3 moment, after Queen F3.
Okay, but what else to play except Queen F3? I mean, Queen F3 is the normal move in the position.
Okay.
Mr. Anand, last game you were asked if the tiger is back, and today several grandmasters tweeted that you look very strong. How close are you to your very best?
I think during a match you don't want to start analyzing yourself too much. This is something I mean, there are specific problems which are coming at the board and you don't want to wander too much. Maybe this is something I can reflect on later simply.
Mr. Anand, I read an article where you're saying, you're describing the relationship with Magnus. You said, the rivalry between us begins to dominate our relationship. In the world of chess, he is not among my friends. What do you mean about that?
Well, simply that once you know that the match ahead, you don't really keep much social contact or something like that. I certainly didn't mean we were enemies or something, simply that, well, there are other people I hang out with more, and the same with him.
Anand, at this point last year, Magnus was starting his winning streak against you. What will you do to prevent that from happening this year?
Well, just try to play well.
And Magnus, you seem a lot happier today than you did on Tuesday. What's your expectations for the next two matches where you play white?
Well, it's a lot nicer making a draw with black than with white. Yeah? I'm quite optimistic on the future of the match, but it's not going to be easy. And but again, I guess since I have two white games now, this is sort of the moment to try and pull ahead.
Do we have questions? Okay, thank you very much for attending this press conference.